Let's catch up with Ian Casselberry for our update, of course, in Major League Baseball. And it's been a really busy offseason. It's usually pretty busy in the offseason, more so this year for sure. And it's all presented by Andrea and Greg at VistaNet Telecommunications. Ian, so good to have you, buddy. And let's start first with Yankees pitcher Luis Severino. His elbow injury has prompted the distinct possibility of Tommy John surgery, and he would not only miss this season, but it looks like a chunk of next season as well. So Ian, what's the Yanks' plan to replace the pitcher they were really counting on again to be a big cog in the rotation?
Well, losing a pitcher of Luis Severino's caliber would hurt any team, but if there's a team that has the starting pitching depth, both on their current Major League staff and in the minor leagues, it might be the Yankees. And remember, the Yankees won over 100 games last year with Luis Severino only pitching a little bit in September, and they didn't have Garrett Cole at the top of their rotation. So not to say that the Yankees will be fine, but I think they can sustain this loss. Obviously, they would be better with Luis Severino. He's one of the best pitchers in the majors when healthy, but he only pitched 20 innings last year, including the postseason due to shoulder and lat injuries. This apparently was coming with Severino, though. I mean, he had MRIs reportedly in December and January, and then after a bullpen session, he complained of forearm discomfort, and that is usually a red flag. You know, pitchers start talking about pain in their forearm. That is very often a precursor to a torn ligament in the elbow that needs reconstructive surgery. And that sounds like exactly what's going to happen here with Luis Severino.
So you think they may just dig into the system, and you don't anticipate a trade for another starter?
Not at this point. I think the Yankees are going to try to figure out what they have in the first half of the season, maybe through the first 2, maybe 3 months. They are in a tough spot. With Severino out, the Yankees could be without James Paxton for the first couple of weeks, maybe first month of the season after he had minor back surgery. And they're also without Domingo Germán, who is serving an 81-game domestic violence suspension. But they still have Masahiro Tanaka. I think they're very happy that they didn't trade Jay Happ now at this point. So they have Cole, Tanaka, Happ. And then I think 2 names to look at are Jordan Montgomery and Jonathan Loaisiga. Both of those guys, I think, can fill in that 4 or 5 spot in the rotation. And then maybe as the season develops after the first month or 2, there are some top pitching prospects that the Yankees could also call on. David Garcia is their number 1 prospect. He had 165 strikeouts, just rocketed from high A to triple A last year. Michael King, also a top prospect. Clark Schmidt had 102 strikeouts in 91 innings last year, also ascending from rookie to double A. And then there are other options where they could possibly, depending on the spot in the rotation, go with someone like Chad Green as an opener, maybe pitch 1-2 innings, and then tap into that bullpen depth to cover those middle innings. Another name to look at is former Colorado Rocky, former Asheville tourist, I believe, Chad Bettis, who's in a camp on a minor league contract. I'm not sure the Yankees would be crazy about Bettis making the team and suddenly having to pay him $2 million if he makes the team. But again, if they need somebody to fill those middle innings, if they need some depth going with that opener strategy, there are a lot of options for Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone to look at before I think going the trade route.
By the way, speaking of the Yankees, speaking of options, man, what options does Yankees outfielder Brett Gardner have? Looks like he's taken action on a fan who's been stalking him. This is a female fan, we should point out. Not only Brett Gardner, but stalking his family as well. What's the latest on that, Ian?
Yeah, this is a crazy story, and maybe speaks a little bit to some of the problems with social media these days. And I think another topic we're going to discuss, we'll get into that as well. But a female fan who apparently thinks that she has some sort of rapport or hidden relationship, unspoken relationship with Brett Gardner that developed over social media, even though Gardner insists they have never met in person. She even says that, they met on social media, and maybe this is the case where, Gardner was kind of nice to a female fan or an admirer, and this woman may have taken that the wrong way or taking it too far and has pushed toward a point where Gardner has said, filed court papers saying this woman has harassed and menaced him and his family for the past 4 years, going on 5. So you wonder, you mentioned options. I mean, not to make light of this, but Gardner, maybe he has to hire some sort of personal security. I mean, you could take measures to block someone on social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook. But this is kind of a disturbing situation here with Brett Gardner.
Boy, no kidding. You got to be real careful there, for sure, because, there are some crazies out there. And it sounds like he's got one right now. All the best, man. I think you can afford some extra security if need be. Ian Casselberry is with the Wise Guys, our Major League Baseball update presented by VistaNet Telecommunications. All right, the Astros are being taunted, and I guess this is really no surprise. Some fans are, though, crossing the line in their anger against Houston. One fan told an Astros player he hopes the player's child dies from cancer. And Ian, this bothers me because and I had this discussion with Chris Womack on Monday, and I just feel like if Manfred had suspended the Astro players involved instead of kind of absolving them from all of this, maybe this type of activity would be on a less nasty basis. And I get what Chris is saying. He's like, that doesn't excuse what those fans said, and I'm not excusing that, but I'm wondering if that would be as intense if Manfred had actually done his job and suspended the players.
It's possible that there's more animosity, more anger toward these players because they weren't punished. But, even if they had been suspended when they came back or even while they were serving their suspension, we talked about the problems with social media in Brett Gardner and the stalker/admirer that he has. Social media is just a cesspool in a lot of cases, especially with fans hiding behind their keyboards, keyboard warriors thinking they can say whatever they want. It's having the anonymity of being at the ballpark. You're yelling at a player and you think nothing's going to happen. But this is even more emboldening because it's behind an anonymous or just like an alias on social media. Like this guy whoever said this to Josh Reddick that he wished his children got cancer. I mean, obviously a horrible thing to say. There's no way this guy would say this to Josh Reddick's face, right? Yeah. And I think this is a heightened example of that. Maybe if Rob Manfred had been more proactive in suspending and penalizing these Astro players, there would be less anger toward them. But I also think this is an indication of just how angry and how out of hand it has gotten between fans and athletes and celebrities when they're as accessible as ever on social media. So this is one example of that, and we've seen another example of what we talked about with Brett Gardner. Fans think they have access to these fans and they can say or do whatever they want, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right. The keyboard courage, to me, that's still just, and that's where social media has really had a negative impact just on our society. And people go, well, how would you say that? Well, there's millions of people on social media in this country. That's an impact. And a lot of them are angry. A lot of them are ignorant. And a lot of them have no lives. And those are the ones that usually tend to dominate social media. I still like the cat pictures, so I will say that. That's why I'm still on Facebook. I just like to get away and watch little kitty videos. Ian Casselberry with the Wise Guys, presented by VistaNet Telecommunications. Of course, it is our Major League Baseball update. All right. Meanwhile, the player who exposed the Astros cheating, A's pitcher Mike Fiers, despite being called a snitch by Big Papi, was greeted with cheers by fans at the team's spring training facility. And despite the love from fans, how do you think Oakland's locker room is dealing with Fiers?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think Fiers is certainly a hero to A's fans and many throughout baseball for being the whistleblower on this Astros sign-stealing scheme. I would imagine his Oakland teammates have his back. Maybe there's a little bit of suspicion, like, do we have to be careful what we say around him? Is it going to be publicized? But I mean, it should be pointed out that Fiers didn't come forward with this until he went to another team. And if you're an Oakland Athletic, you say, hey, he broke whatever clubhouse code you think it was because he thought it was going to help us, the Oakland Athletics, beat the Houston Astros and other competitors for a playoff spot. So I would think there's some gratitude and some trust in Fiers because of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, look, Mike Fiers is certainly going to be taking heat from from Ortiz, from, I'm sure, a number of major league players. Good thing he's with the A's, and he doesn't have to bat. He's got a designated hitter. So that's maybe a good thing, too. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, you sometimes when you get pressured, you come out with that. And I wonder what some players like Big Papi, if he was in that situation, too, like if he would hold on to it or not. Obviously, the way he's reacting to Fiers, he would probably keep that a secret. But, it gets kind of tiring. It's like, wow, it's like Fiers, whether he was forced to or not, or just decided to. Maybe he was feeling guilty about this. I'm not quite sure, but he's certainly taking heat for it. But I'm glad to see the fans are sticking with them on this one. Otherwise, dude, he would be a really lonely guy.
Real quick on Big Papi, we didn't mention this when we talked about this last week, but Ortiz might be a little bit more sensitive to this issue because if the listeners might remember, Ortiz was named as a PED user in the Mitchell report, so somebody blew the whistle on him. So he might be a little more sensitive to anybody who's, breaking clubhouse code or revealing things behind closed doors.
Sure. Well, here's my message to Big Papi. Don't use steroids and don't steal signs using technology. It's just, something as simple as that. I get it, though, why he would be a little extra sensitive to that. Hey, Ian, this is a great story. Madison Bumgarner, just down the road from us in Hudson, North Carolina. Who knew he was Mad Bum, the rodeo guy? Yeah, Madison said he's been using an alias while competing in rodeo competitions. What? Yeah, man. The guy that was out for months after an ATV crash just a couple of years back, you'd think he would have learned the lesson. But what's Mad Bum's new team, the D-backs, saying about his off-field competition?
Yeah, Madison Bumgarner revealed to have a moonlighting career as a rodeo rider, lassoing steers in rodeo competitions. Madison Bumgarner played coy when asked what the Diamondbacks think about this, saying, you'll have to ask the owner, Ken Kendrick, or talk to the general manager, Mike Hazen. But I got to think they're not crazy about this. And the competition that was in question when Bumgarner was photographed and revealed to be Mason Saunders, a rodeo rider. He was not under contract yet. He hadn't signed his deal with the Diamondbacks. But, so for a 5-year, $85 million deal, I got to think there is some language in there, or the Diamondbacks have made it known that they don't want Bumgarner competing in these matters. Now, again, we're not talking about Bumgarner, like on a bucking bronco or anything like this. This is lassoing, you're lassoing like the back leg of a bull. And he does do it right-handed as opposed to left-handed, which maybe shouldn't be a surprise since Bumgarner also bats right-handed. But, it's not too difficult to imagine that, he could get yanked off that horse, land on that left shoulder, something like that, and all of a sudden the D-backs are out. They're a very expensive free agent pitcher.
Oh, boy. And by the way, so what was Mad Bum's rodeo name? He was an alias, by the way. His name was Mason Saunders. All right, the first name is a take on his first name, Madison, and Saunders is his wife's maiden name. But whatever happened to a good old-fashioned porn star name like Mike Studd or Up Next?
Yeah, I mean, Buck Wild. I mean, we could spend a whole segment thinking of things. It's a little bit disappointing. Maybe he thought it would draw too much attention if he adopted a name like that, or maybe Madison Bumgarner is saving those kind of names for that kind of career.
Yeah, man. We'll be looking for that. You got to do something after baseball, right? He's just getting himself ready for it.
You can't ride rodeo all day, apparently. Dirt bikes, rodeo, and...
Yeah. Well, he's off to a good start. Ian, before we let you go, Ian Casselberry, baseball headlines presented by VistaNet Telecommunications. Why the dust-up, Ian, between the Phillies and the Curly Fanatic?
Yeah, this is a weird story. Apparently, this is a copyright issue that the rights are up this year, and the creators of the Phillies Fanatic believe, that they hold the rights to the Philly Fanatic. They created this mascot that's wildly popular, not just in Philadelphia, but throughout the major and minor leagues. The Phillies are saying, if he wasn't affiliated with the Phillies, nobody would really care about the Fanatic. So there have been some issues where, the Phillies have kind of changed the look of the Fanatic a little bit over the years, adding different colors or feathers or making him less fat, maybe to separate the Phillies fanatic from what he looked like in his original creation, so the creators would have less of a claim on a copyright issue. I would imagine both sides would eventually hammer this out. Really, both sides have something to win here and more to lose if the Phillies fanatic is suddenly having to be put back in the closet because of some copyright issue.
I'll tell you what, the creators, are not happy about this because, it's their baby. And, how sometimes teams can be. They always feel like, we got to do something different. You know what? If the Philly fanatic can just entertain fans, who cares how he looks? I've seen the difference. It's a complete waste of time. They didn't really do anything to him except a little tweaks here and there. And some folks may go, well, then why are the creators getting upset about this? Because it's their baby. That's why they're upset about this. So, like the Phillies have anything else to worry about than getting ready for the season. Let's see if Bryce Harper can lead them to a freaking division championship. Great stuff as always, and we appreciate your time. And, we're back at it tomorrow. Got you lined up and ready to go, in the 3:00 hour for, more NFL Gold Nuggets.
All right, I'll be ready. Thanks so much, Pat.
Always appreciate you, Ian. Thank you so much. That's Ian Casselberry with the Wise Guys. And Ian's appearance talking Major League Baseball headlines presented by VistaNet Telecommunications.